Welcome back, fam. I want to share with you my experiences on my scouting trip to Guadalajara. Tips you'll need on your scouting trip. I've done significant amount of international travel, both with friends and solo. Most of these trips were for vacation, relaxation, and fun. But all of them were learning experiences. And this is the point of a scouting trip. So, who is this black man who took this scouting trip? I'm Kevin Giles, and this is Melanin Man Travels. The goal of this platform is to educate, motivate, and coach black queer men and black single men on traveling abroad, and for those who are interested, on becoming a black expat and living abroad. Taking a scouting trip to one or more of the countries you are considering is crucial. Mexico as a country, and the city of Guadalajara specifically, had been on my black list for a while. I'm going to share some do's and don'ts and the awesome experiences that I had. But before I do that, have you thought about subscribing to my channel? You might be new here, or you visited before. Since you're here now, why don't you stay connected so you can watch and even learn from my various experiences in planning and taking international trips. If moving abroad is what you're ready for, hit the notification bell. Come along and follow my journey. This was my fourth trip to Mexico and my second trip to Guadalajara. With each visit, I considered, could I live here one day? I think many of us pondered this idea. So, here is how it all went down. I desired to live like a local as much as possible. So the first week, I did not reach out to anyone that I knew there or that I had met on any social media group. I stayed in a neighborhood I had not previously visited. I rented a one-bedroom apartment that had a nice patio. The developers in Mexico are hip to the short-term rental game. They're building apartments as 2-bedroom, 2-baths with the ability to separate them into 2 apartments. Kind of like a hotel room with an adjoining door to the room next door. I stayed in one of these. As I zigzagged through the streets, I tried the local restaurants, learned where the grocery stores, shopping malls, and the pharmacies were. I also learned something new. Buying clothes in Mexico is expensive. As I walked, sometimes locals would stop me on the street just to say hello. As a 6-foot-tall black man in Mexico, I kinda stand out. I experienced the most friendly and the most helpful people. Here's an example. Overhearing someone speak English always grabs my attention in Mexico. This happened one day in a park, and I said hello to the couple that was speaking. Within seconds, they were schooling me on the best ways to find an apartment in the city. Generally, you just drive around a neighborhood of interest and you look for the rental signs. But they gave me websites that I was not aware of before. I stayed primarily in a neighborhood called Colonia Americana. It was voted #1 coolest neighborhood in the world. The neighborhood is divided by a street called Avenida Chapultepec, a popular street filled with coffee shops, restaurants, and bars. It has a pedestrian walk down the center for socializing and people watching. On the weekends, vendors display and sell their unique goods. At first, I stayed on the east side of the avenue. To some, the east side is a little grittier. It turned out to be my favorite area. It felt urban to me, versus the west side, which feels slightly more suburban and familial. I did enjoy staying and hanging out in both areas. After getting my feet wet that first week, I took the short flight over to Mexico City to check things out. The goal was to see if the capital city could be an expat destination for me. I stayed in 2 different neighborhoods in Mexico City, Escandon and Nápoles. I chose these 2 areas because they're very different from each other, but both were close to the Roma and Condesa neighborhoods, which are known for their LGBT presence and cool vibes. Escadon was definitely a neighborhood filled with locals. No one was unfriendly, but people tended to stay to themselves. The area was very commercial, filled with car dealerships, repair shops, and factories. I felt very safe everywhere I walked, and it is a very affordable neighborhood. However, it's really congested. The host of my short-term rental only pays $800 per month for a 2-bed, 1-bath loft apartment. From Escadon, it was easy to walk to the Roma neighborhood, which was beautiful. I experienced some great restaurants, public squares, and street fairs. Ciudad de Mexico is a big city with lots to do. It's filled with cultural activities. The Frida Kahlo Museum and Castillo de Chapultepec, just to name a few. There's a great public transportation system that's inexpensive and quite efficient. One day, I got on the wrong train because I mistranslated the sign. Once I figured out I was going the wrong way, I just jumped off. I opened up a transit app, which are great tools to have, and just found another route to my destination. What I also learned from this blunder is to take screenshots of my online map route just in case Wi-Fi becomes unavailable. Next, I moved to my Mr. B&B accommodations in Nápoles. Mr. B&B is known as the Airbnb for LGBT travelers. I use Mr. B&B for Escadon as well. That tells you that there's a large gay population in Mexico City, both locals and visitors. I hate to use the word accepting, but its residents don't seem to be moved in any way about someone's gender orientation or expression. On a previous trip to Mexico City, I remember walking through one of the large city squares in El Centro, which is the downtown area. As I walked, I saw different groups of people dancing to different styles of music. It was really cool to see the community being so interactive. What really stood out was the people who were dancing represented the full spectrum of gender expression. There were straight couples dancing, lesbian couples. There were straight men dancing with trans women. It was such a cool sight. Nápoles is a beautiful neighborhood. Avenida Insurgentes is the main street through the neighborhood, filled with restaurants, office complexes, and shopping venues. My accommodations were walking distance to Mexico City's World Trade Center. Nápoles is an upper-class neighborhood, not rich and snobby. The residential options were more to my liking in this neighborhood. It had a mix of older and newer buildings. It was lively during the day, early evenings, and the weekends, and at night it had a suburban, quiet feel. Again, I felt comfortable walking at night. I was staying in Nápoles when I took the metro to Castillo de Chapultepec. The Chapultepec Castle is a must-do in Ciudad de Mexico. The views of the city are fantastic. At the station, I couldn't get my train pass to scan properly. As I'm struggling at the payment kiosk, and I had already missed one train, a lady was kind enough to stop and offer some assistance. Unfortunately, due to her limited English and my limited Spanish, she wasn't able to understand my problem. So, what did she do? She paid my train fare. The citizens of Mexico continue to show me love and demonstrate their awesome humanity. After spending about a week in the city, I realized it's just too large for me. I'm from LA, another large and overly populated city. That mix does not equate to the peace that I'm looking for. Another thing I discovered is that the altitude is too high. Mexico City sits over 7,000 feet above sea level. That's 1.5 miles. And there's a lot of pollution. My asthmatic lungs were like, nah bruh, we're good. Back to Guadalajara. This time, I stayed in an Airbnb on the west side of Chapu, as the locals call it. I stayed in a casita on the property of a really friendly and hospitable family. Again, more Mexican hospitality. Once I got settled in, I forced myself out of my comfort zone and immediately attended a meet and greet hosted by the Black People of Guadalajara Facebook group. This is the group that I got most of my information from prior to my trip. It's not always easy to show up at an event where you don't know anyone, but I put myself out there. Although this specific meetup was attended primarily by women, I had a great time, and eventually more brothers showed up. Throughout my expat journey, it has become apparent that women are leading the charge in the move abroad space, and this is the reason for my platform, to show Black men that they can live lives as expats as well. From that meetup, I made connections with other Black expats, some who are relatively new to Guadalajara and others who moved there years ago. They live all over the city and speak various levels of Spanish. Some are new learners, others are fairly fluent. This made me feel at ease. It was a new friend from the meetup who asked if I cycled. I do, so the next day she took me and another friend to sign up for the city's bike share program so that we could navigate the city more easily. What a godsend. I got to exercise and I was able to explore further and faster. The trip was filled with lessons. Because I was using the bike share app and Google Maps, I ended up running out of internet data fairly quickly. So this taught me, or it reminded me, to always use free Wi-Fi available throughout the city, like in cafes and restaurants. All good though, Guadalajara was starting to feel like home. During my 4th week in Mexico, some friends from home told me that they were going to be in Puerto Vallarta. So I popped over to hang out with my boys and see if the city would be a good fit for me. I visited PV many times and it's always a vibe. It was also on my Black radar, so being a fairly quick trip from Guadalajara, either a 4-hour drive, a 5-hour bus ride, or a 45-minute plane ride, there are options for a little beach getaway from the city, especially since I can't wear my sexy swim trunks in Guadalajara. Guadalajara is on the Pacific Ocean side of the country, but it's not on the water. Puerto Vallarta, or PV as people call it, has such a quaint village feel. Life feels so easy and free. What I learned from this trip is I'm actually attracted to hanging out on the beach for brunch and cocktails more than living and building community there. However, speaking with local expats, they do have a wonderful community and it is super gay friendly. Another factor I had to consider is it is a place that is very popular with tourists and expats. So the residential rental and the real estate markets are more expensive than I'm willing to pay. As usual, I had a great time, but this trip solidified for me that Puerto Vallarta is truly a vacation destination and not a place that I want to live. But I am glad it's close by. Five weeks in, and I'm building community among my new Black expat and my local Mexican friends. Before I returned to the States, I started to plan my return trip and decide on neighborhoods I might want to live in. With my friends, I explored different neighborhoods and housing options to see what might fit my desire and my budget. I connected with my various short-term rental hosts to discuss possible longer-term rental opportunities. I made a list of healthcare options and needs that I might have, such as local pharmacies and clinics, and the availability of medications that I might need. I identified the closest hospitals and if any English-speaking doctors are accessible in the areas that I was searching. I checked out some workout facilities, and I learned that some gyms require a local Mexican bank account in order to make payments. So until I can get that set up, Parque Columbus and other parks in the city have great hiking trails and beautiful scenery. The following week, my 6th week, my favorite cousin came to visit me to also experience Mexico from more of a tourist perspective. We visited the artist community of Tlaquepaque. We experienced great food, delicious drinks, a family vibe, and vibrant colors. Spending time in Guadalajara solidified my decision to live abroad. I experienced so much peace and mental healing during this time. This trip taught me that healing cannot happen in the same places that traumatized me. Unfortunately, for me, those all too familiar places are corporate America and the United States in general. As an American worker and resident, my psychological safety was trampled upon, and it continues to be at risk. Too many of us are conditioned to normalize the abuse that we experience on our jobs and in our own country. Deciding to remove myself from a place that is ruled by white supremacy has been the best thing for me. And white supremacy is not solely white men riding at night, wearing hoods and carrying torches. It is the belief system that the social construct of whiteness is essential and valuable, and that anyone who is not quote-unquote white, again a social construct, is of less human worth in our society. Well, let me tell you, my black skin and my black experience are very valuable, and they will be honored. At week 7, I felt like I was already a resident. My best friend came down to check things out, and he was also welcomed into the family. Part of my friend group has become a digital nomad group, where we began to support each other's growing business ventures. We educated each other and we collaborated with each other. We were helping each other realize and visualize how successful and rewarding a life abroad can be. Many of the employees at my local coffee shops and restaurants became friends. I would practice my Spanish with them as they were happy to practice their English with an American. Although I am a proud black man, it was refreshing to be seen just as an American, as a man, and not judged by my skin color first. To make sure Greg felt at home, and to get my new tribe together, I decided to throw a little rooftop kickback. Those Guadalajara nights. You know how we do it. And boy, did Guadalajara show up. There were locals and expats eating, drinking, and vibing.
No, I'm sorry. Oh, yeah. Send me.
There was a concern that some of my new local friends, who are not well versed in English, wouldn't have anyone to talk to. It's actually a funny thought. We're in Mexico, and the Mexicans would not have anyone to talk to. Well, there were enough bilingual expats in attendance that their Spanish was flowing like my English. And then another friend, a local Guadalajara DJ, Martin Yee, offered to spin for the party. Who knew this Mexican brother would take us back to 90s hip-hop and R&B? Yeah, that party was a banger. During my last week, I had the opportunity to experience a Guadalajara tradition, GD Luz 2023, the celebration of the city's birth. As one of the oldest cities in Mexico, every year Guadalajara hosts the GD Luz event, celebrating local and international art, music, and culture. It was a great way to end my trip. Once I returned to the US, I began to meditate on my trip and visualize my new life there. I set a move date and I began my moving plans. Many of these plans involve my life in the US and making arrangements to no longer live there permanently, such as how to arrange mail, banking, medical services, and take care of overall personal business. What do I do with my house in the States was another question. You can check out this video for more information on that subject. Once I return to Guadalajara, I will stay in short-term rentals or with friends until I can find an apartment that suits me. Proper planning and preparation for an exploratory trip is really important to reduce some of the challenges and pitfalls that can be encountered when you move to your new destination. We want instant gratification. It's part of our nature, but we have to learn to control it. So don't let the excitement of a new destination or a new home cause you to rush your decisions. I'm following God as He directs my path on this journey, and I'm watching Him open each door that I need to walk through. Stop, breathe, listen, and ease into this journey. If you do, you'll hear and see your next step more clearly and all of the steps destined for you in this season of your life. So, be blessed and let's engage in the comment section of this video. All questions are welcome. And if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If there are other things you would like for me to discuss in a future video, just let me know. And brothers, we need to hear your voices and gain your perspective. So get in the game, and I'll see you next time.